Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be talking about another one of my interview experiences which seem to be quite popular. So unfortunately I can't go into specifics about the details around the role or the company because I've signed an NDA and I'm not trying to get sued, but it's a FAANG company, so one of the really big tech companies. I will say. I applied for a graduate role in New Zealand, and I'll just quickly summarize basically like the timeline in case I don't know anyone's curious. So basically on the 14th of June I applied online. On the 7th of July, so about 3 weeks later, I got an email saying I got through to the next round, which is a phone interview. And then I did my phone interview on the 16th of July. I say phone interview, it was more like a video chat. After that, about a week later, I got an email saying I got through to the next round, which is a loop interview. And I did that on the 2nd of August. And then about a week later, I got a call saying, unfortunately, I was rejected. But yeah, if you guys want to hear about the interview process, specific questions, and like just my general experience, then just stick around. Alright, so firstly I'm going to talk about the phone interview. Even though a lot of places say you have a phone interview, it's really like a video call, so I don't know why they call it like a phone screen, because most of the time the other person is going to have their camera on, and then you're going to be expected to put your camera on as well. So yeah, so this lasted about 40 minutes. I think they said it was going to be around an hour. I think we finished early because I really wasn't that good at answering the questions. The specific role I applied for was a technical role. It wasn't like software engineering, so there wasn't any specific testing prior to the interview. However, I kind of think that it's almost better to have testing because, spoiler alert, like in the end I didn't get the role because I don't think I was like, my technical skills were quite there, which honestly I kind of knew at the start of like this whole process, but for some reason like they kept on putting me through to the next round. But yeah, anyways, at least I have a story to tell, right? The interview started pretty basic. They just kind of introduced themselves, asked me like what's my understanding of the role and why I wanted to work there and that kind of thing. And then it basically went straight into technical questions. So they were asking me things about computer networking, programming languages, things like SQL and databases. And then basically not long after, they realized that I couldn't really answer any of these questions. And then it went into behavioral. So just pretty typical behavioral questions. But some examples of them would be, when did you have to make a tough decision? When did you have to like take risks? So make a decision without having all the information. What's your main skill? They also asked me what's like a cool technical skill that's helped me like in my time at university, and I couldn't think of anything to say, so I literally just channeled my inner Ali Abdal and I was like, I can type pretty quick, which I think, to be honest, is an underrated skill, but yeah, it wasn't that impressive, I guess. After the behavioral questions, this was about 30 minutes in, and then they pushed it back onto me, so I had the opportunity to ask them questions. And I continued this for about 10 minutes, and then that was kind of it. Like, that was the end of the interview. So I have to be honest, after this interview, I literally thought it was a disaster. Like, I thought there was no way I was going to make it to the next round because I didn't answer any of the technical questions properly. However, they did say in the beginning, like, they're not going to punish you if you don't know the technical questions. So, like, you should be honest. But in general, I do think, like, obviously, being a technical role, like, your understanding of these concepts is quite important. So yeah, I literally thought there was no way I was getting through. Honestly, I had filmed like a whole interview experience video and literally uploaded it, was about to hit publish, and then I get another email saying I got through to the next round, which is a loop. So if you don't know what a loop is, basically it's kind of like the final round for big tech companies where you will have multiple interviews in one day. And luckily, obviously because of COVID and all that, like I did this online, and it was, to be honest, very intense and quite exhausting. So I can't imagine having to do this in person. Before the loop happens, they kind of give you like a basic things that they want you to study on. So like there's all these different topics, and I kind of tried to revise all 6 of the topics, where I think in hindsight I should have just focused on like 1 or 2. So for example, there were things like cybersecurity, databases, operating systems, and I should have just like honed in on one and got more specialized. But anyway, so on the day of the interviews, there were 4 separate people, and they were about 1 hour each, or they were scheduled to be 1 hour, but luckily most of mine finished early. So my first interview was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was with one of the hiring managers. And this interview was 100% behavioral, which honestly I was quite surprised, like not one technical question at all. But yeah, anyways, it was pretty generic. So just questions like you know, when's the time you had to help a team member out, or, you know, give an example of a time where you had to make a difficult decision, a time where you had to deal with difficult feedback, a time where, you know, you overcame a big challenge. And I also remember there was one question I kind of got stuck on, which was name an example of a time where you had a disagreement with somebody else. And I couldn't really think of an answer, but that was okay. And then there was about 10 minutes also just me asking them questions, so just pretty generic stuff like, you know, why do you want to work there, what do you enjoy about your job, and that kind of thing. So yeah, overall after this interview I felt pretty good. Like, I feel like I answered the questions fairly well. And then after that I had about a 20-minute break, and then it was time for my second interview. So this was definitely the hardest of them all. It was very much technical, and basically the whole time was just digging into concepts. So the interviewer, in the beginning, basically they kind of let me choose what topics I wanted to talk about. I think they realized that I wasn't super knowledgeable, and, you know, they didn't want me to just like not have any answers. So they were like, okay, you know, what do you want to talk about? So I was kind of like, okay, I kind of like cybersecurity. And then they just started making up random questions about cybersecurity. And then they talked a little bit about like databases. So like, what's your understanding of cloud computing and like all that kind of stuff. All my knowledge was like very base level, and I could tell like this guy, he was like a real hardcore like programmer. So I don't think he was very impressed by my answers. And then yeah, I think the last couple, like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, there were a couple of behavioral questions, but majority of this was technical. So yeah, this interview lasted about 55 minutes, so it was definitely the longest one. In hindsight, I think if the interview runs for a long time, it's almost a bad sign, because it's like the interviewer wants you to succeed, right? So if you don't answer well, then they kind of like push it for as long as possible so they can at least maybe get some good answers out of you. Whereas my third interview was only 30 minutes long. I think that definitely was the best one. So with the third one, it was with the same guy that did my phone screen, so I kind of knew who he was. And to be honest, he was like just super chill and very nice. I don't think he asked any very difficult questions either. It was just a lot of behavioral and just like trying to get to know me basically. So one of the questions was name a time where you had to overcome a challenge, and I talked about going on exchange, and then I also mentioned like, you know, during my internship there was like issues as well when my manager was away. And then yeah, just pretty basic. I don't remember a lot, but I remember it was more like a conversation rather than like a straight up give me an example when like the first one that I did. But yeah, so that ended up only being about half an hour, and honestly I felt pretty good after that one. And then the last interview was with another one of the managers, and this was only 30 minutes as well. Basically each of the like managers, they have a separate like competency that they're trying to assess for. So I think for the last one it was based around problem solving. So they were basically like, okay, if you know if you had a customer like call you and complain about a certain problem, like how would you deal with it? So then you kind of had to explain like your mindset and, you know, how you would go about solving problems. And then some other questions I got asked were around like disagreements. So that same question from interview 1, name a time where, you know, you disagreed with somebody, and I still couldn't think of an answer, which probably wasn't a good sign. I didn't think of this before, but I guess there's probably a chance that like the first interview that you did, they might talk to the last person. So if you end up like blanking on a question in your first interview, then maybe it's a good idea to think of an answer, because they might end up asking you the same questions again. I definitely found that throughout the whole process there definitely was quite a lot of repetition, so I got a lot of questions around like overcoming challenges, you know, difficult situations and that kind of thing. After my last interview, I actually had another final presentation part. So the last bit was basically you had to present a project that you had been working on and like explain, you know, what problem you were trying to solve and how you would go about like improving it and all that kind of stuff. So initially I was considering showing them a YouTube video of mine, since obviously that's something I'm very passionate about. But then I was like, actually, you know, on my channel I talk about interviews and I've talked about like various companies that I've applied for, so I didn't think it was like the most appropriate. So I ended up just going onto Wix and just creating this real like bad website, and then that's or that I had to show them. So yeah, that probably wasn't the best because I think they could tell that it wasn't something I was super passionate about, and you know, it was literally just a website that I threw together in a couple of hours. So that wasn't the greatest. After the very long process, honestly, I still thought I had a chance. Like, I think I maybe, out of the 4 interviews, I would say 2 of them were like I did well, and then the other 2 I probably could have done better. Although I still kept an open mind, like I definitely thought I had a chance. However, about a week later, after I did the loop interview, I got a call from a recruiter saying that I didn't get the offer. So the main feedback that I got was, you know, I was a good candidate and I answered, you know, quite a lot of the questions well, but the role wasn't a good fit for me. And to be honest, I kind of knew this going in. Like, I definitely thought I wasn't very like qualified technically. However, for some reason I still got through, you know, all those rounds, and like I still had to go through the whole process, which was, to be honest, a bit annoying. But overall, like, I definitely learned a lot. And going through that very rigorous process, now when I have other interviews, it just seems like a breeze. Definitely was a tough process and I learned a lot, but I think I would agree in saying that the role probably wasn't the best fit for me. Deep down, I kind of knew that, you know, I didn't really want to work there, but obviously being a big tech company, there's a lot of like clout and a lot of hype involved, so it's kind of like you just go with it. But yeah, overall I have no complaints in terms of like all the recruiters. They're very good at keeping in touch with me and keeping me updated, so really no complaints there. I think overall, if you do have an interview at a FAANG company, I would say definitely brush up on your technical skills. I think that's, if you're going for a technical role, then obviously you need to be knowledgeable. And also, if they do tell you that, you know, they want you to have specific knowledge, it's better to focus on, you know, 1 or 2 areas rather than having just like a base level, you know, understanding of everything, because it doesn't really show like what you're passionate about. And I remember that was one of the questions somebody asked me during the interviews. They were like, okay, you don't really seem passionate about this, like, do you really want to work here? And I think that guy kind of like saw through me, because the truth is, like, I didn't. I was kind of just like going through the motions. So yeah, anyways, I hope you guys found this video informative and learned a little bit, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Ciao.